Hey, guys, I want to thank you for watching this video. Welcome to the Roundtable, where we discuss all things sports. I want to introduce you to my main man, Kevin Ranke. Kevin is one of the smartest individuals that I know when it comes to sports discussion analytics, whether it's NBA, NFL, whatever you want to talk about. This guy, he's got a real pulse on things. He likes to use facts, which is something that I appreciate. And today, in this video, we are going to be going over the NBA playoffs and what we think would have happened if the NBA season had never gotten suspended. Now, that's going to disregard any of the playoff seedings. And I know that the 8th seed out west was kind of contentious, and then some of the 4 to 6 spot out east was kind of really close. But we're going to pretend like all the seedings were the same, and we're going to be going over the NBA playoffs. Now, Kevin, what is your background in basketball?
My dad was a basketball coach for middle school, high school. He's refereed for years, so I've been learning about basketball since I could walk and talk. And my dad's been explaining it to me ever since I was a baby, basically.
Right.
And I played it all throughout middle, high school, and just love it. Just love it.
And who is your favorite team in the NBA?
Well, you can tell by the shirt. Cleveland Cavaliers, die-hard fan.
Who's your favorite current player in the NBA?
My favorite current player in the NBA is probably still Kevin Love, just because he's the only good player from the Cavaliers. Yeah, and he's just, he's the last one from the glory days of back when the Cavaliers were competing.
Back in 2016.
Hey, feels like a long time ago right now.
All 4 years ago. I still remember where I was watching that Game 7. That was legendary. So I'm going to show you guys, for those of you who haven't seen my first video yet, this is my bracket. This is what I think the NBA playoffs would have looked like. Kevin, can you see all the teams I've got here?
I can.
All right. So, what we're looking at out west, got Lakers over Memphis, Thunder over Utah, the 6-seeded Rockets I have beating the Denver Nuggets in the 7-game series, and the Clippers over the Mavericks. I've got the Lakers and the Clippers moving on. We have the all LA showdown that everyone's pretty much been expecting all season, with the Lakers moving on. Out east, obviously the Bucks are going to beat the Magic, and the Raptors are going to beat the Nets. But then I have the Sixers and the Heat both upsetting the Celtics and the Pacers respectively. And then this is probably where most people are going to start, sending in the death threats. I think that the Miami Heat are going to beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round. I have the Toronto Raptors beating the 76ers. Then the Raptors actually going back to the NBA Finals, where unfortunately I don't think they have the current firepower to take over the Los Angeles Lakers for a really good game. I think that even though my conference finals and my NBA finals, I have all ending in 6 games, I think that the conference finals look like better matchups and more entertaining series. Kevin, in a minute, I'm just going to go down to your bracket so you can explain yours. This is what we have right here, all right? If you want to go each game step by step, you want to talk about the individual lengths of the series, be my guest. The floor is yours.
All right, I'll start out west here. I've got the Lakers beating the Grizzlies 4-1. Not a whole lot to say there other than I do love Ja Morant, and Jaren Jackson Jr. as well, as both very good players. And I think Memphis will be good eventually, but 20 and 21-year-olds don't usually win in the NBA playoffs. So Lakers move on pretty easily. I disagree with you on this one pretty heavily. I've got the Jazz over the Thunder 4-1. Oklahoma City Thunder are, in my opinion, they're overachieving, and I don't think they're better than many of the teams below them in the seedings. I appreciate the fact that they play hard and they put in good effort every night, but they just don't have the talent as many of the other teams in the West. So I'd have the Jazz beating them in sort of, I guess, a tough 5-game series. I think the games would be close, but I don't see the Thunder being able to pull it out.
Mhm.
And I've got Denver pretty easily beating the Rockets 4-1 because for the simple fact that the Houston Rockets are trying to play in the 6-3 and under league.
I know you're not a big fan of James Harden or Russell Westbrook.
I'm not. I'm not a fan of James Harden or Russell Westbrook. I don't like the way that they play. They're just, and not only that, the Houston Rockets don't have a center, and Nikola Jokic, I do think he's a bit overrated, but he's still very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think that PJ Tucker, who's 2 inches taller than me, can stop a legitimate 7-footer.
I don't see that. In the Houston Rockets Denver Nuggets matchup, who is the best, second best, and third best player in that series?
Best, second best, and third best players?
In that order.
I'd probably put James Harden 1, Jokic 2, and Jamal Murray 3.
Over Russell Westbrook?
Yes.
That is very contentious.
Russell Westbrook's the worst three-point shooter in the NBA, and he shoots a ton of them.
I don't know if you saw the numbers. After they traded away Clint Capella, Russell Westbrook was actually averaging about 60% from the floor, and he was only shooting 2 threes a game, but he was shooting 50% for like a
but it's a very small sample size.
It means he knows his role. I mean that's like saying Dennis Rodman was one of the worst scorers in the NBA, but I mean it's not really what he was supposed to do.
Dennis Rodman also didn't hold the ball a lot, so Russell Westbrook, again, you can't have a point guard, in my opinion, who is a poor three-point shooter, as well as very erratic and turns the ball over a lot. It doesn't work well in the playoffs. It just doesn't.
Not in
the Houston Rockets, in today's game, you can't have little people who can't shoot.
Fair enough.
Okay, you can't. And Russell Westbrook cannot shoot, and I do think that the Houston Rockets are going to get bit right in the butt with the idea that PJ Tucker, who is short, he's not a bad player, but he can't guard a guy who's 7 feet tall.
Of course not.
Nikola Jokic will simply have a field day in the paint, and he's going to look like Hakeem Olajuwon and Wilt Chamberlain all rolled into one in that series. And it's not going to work. It's going to be like watching a varsity team play against a JV team.
All right, and then after that, we've got your first 7-game series of the playoffs. The Los Angeles Clippers over the Dallas Mavericks.
This fact that the seedings worked out this way makes me very sad because
Are you scared for the Clippers?
I would be in this series because I think the Dallas Mavericks are the third best team in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
It's their seeding isn't that high because they did have some injuries. Luka and Porzingis both missed some time this season. So, and again, their record, all these records in the West from about 3 to 7 are kind of jumbled together.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Dallas Mavericks are only like 4 games back of Denver.
Something like
7
that. Yeah, again, and if this is an actual first-round matchup, this saddens me because it shouldn't be, and the Mavericks are a very good team, and I feel like they will give the Clippers their biggest challenge.
Yep.
Because Luka is very good, and I just don't see anyone on the Clippers being able to stop Porzingis. And he's 7'3".
Mm-hmm.
And the Clippers, in my opinion, have a weakness. Their only real weakness on their team would be stopping a very tall player who can score. Yeah, it would be difficult for them with large players who can score because their front line's undersized.
Yep, I get you. In my video that I posted earlier today, I said that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Mavericks in the NBA Finals as soon as next year. I really believe in the young team. I'm totally with you on this.
I'm a big fan of theirs, and I do think that next season they will be competing for the championship. But unfortunately, I just think the Clippers are a little bit better this year, and I think they'll struggle, but I think they'll make it through.
All right, let's head out east. In in the top right, obviously, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks and the Orlando Magic, the 1-8 matchup.
There's nothing.
You have a sweep. There's not really much to explain there. The
Nope.
only reason that anybody knows anybody on the Orlando Magic's roster is because Aaron Gordon has been robbed of 2 dunk contests. That's about it right now.
If it was a dunk contest, the Magic would have a chance. But in terms of real basketball, just forget it.
All right, everybody else, it's going to be a little bit better of a series.
Yeah, I'm seeing some good other matchups here. Miami Heat and Indiana Pacers. I think the Miami Heat will win just because I'm a big Jimmy Butler fan. I really like the way he plays. He plays both ends of the floor, and I do think that he would give Victor Oladipo some problems. The only real, and I do think they match up pretty well with the Pacers. You have Sabonis for the Pacers. I really like him. He's good, but they've got Bam Adebayo as well to kind of help counter him. So I feel like for everything that the Pacers can throw at the Heat have a solid counter, and I think they'll win. It'll be a tough series, but they would prevail in 7.
Yeah,
but good series, good to watch.
Now this Celtics 76ers matchup, this classic 7-game series, I think we've seen a couple times in the last few years. You want to go over what made you think the 76ers can finally win this series?
Oh, yeah. The idea of a 76ers Celtics series brings back a lot of good nostalgia, I'm sure, for NBA fans. There's a lot of good history between those two teams. I've got the 76ers just because I think the Boston Celtics will miss Al Horford in that series because Al Horford guards Joel Embiid very well, but now they don't have anybody to stop him.
That's exactly what I said. My exact same rationale. It seemed like that was the only reason. Otherwise, I really liked what the Celtics were doing too this year. I love that they moved on from Kyrie Irving. That seemed like that could have been a very, very bold, contentious move by the Celtics. But they brought in Kemba Walker, and everything seemed to be working out well. It's just to me, it seems like they could have matched up with every single team better in the entire Eastern Conference besides the 76ers.
I think Boston actually would beat every other team in a 7-game series, including Milwaukee, except for Philadelphia. I just think it's a bad matchup for them. Who are they going to guard with Embiid? Some dude named Daniel Tice isn't going to do it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Something people don't realize is that the Boston Celtics out east are actually doing almost like a mini version, or I guess like a little bit bigger version of what the Rockets are doing out west. If I'm not mistaken, the Celtics' biggest starter, I want to say, is around 6'7" or 6'8". So, especially in a matchup where you have to take on, 6'10" Ben Simmons, 7-foot Joel Embiid, 6'11" Al Horford. You've got 6'9", I think, Tobias Harris, and then Josh Richardson, your smallest starter, is, I believe, 6'6". That's a very, very difficult matchup for the Celtics right there.
Oh, yeah, and Brad Stevens is an excellent coach, and I think he's a much better coach than Brett Brown is. I don't think Brett Brown's a very good coach at all. I've been very disappointed with him. But I just think that Joel Embiid is just going to be just too big and too strong, and because of my respect for Brad Stevens, I'll give him 3 wins in that series, but there's no way they're winning.
And something interesting about right now, in terms of if the NBA were to come back to a bubble city and play the rest of the season or, the entire playoffs in there, is the 76ers this season have about an 800, a .800 winning record at home, but it's about .250 on the road. So what do you think happens? It's probably the biggest discrepancy we've ever seen in NBA history, where a team that they win about 9 out of 10 games that they play at home, but then they lose about 8 out of 10 on the road, So they end up being the 6th seed. What do you think happens if all of a sudden, say, the entire NBA just moves down to Las Vegas or Disney World or wherever they go, and all the games are played in the same stadium?
Yeah, I do. I think that home court advantage doesn't mean as much in the playoffs as it does in the regular season because of the off days.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have someone like Joel Embiid who has constant health issues, constant issues with his knees and his back especially, those will feel a lot better if you don't have to play 3 games in 4 nights and you get a rest day in between every single game. And so I think part of that poor road record is health, and I think part of it too is just laziness and immaturity. Because Joel Embiid, for as great a player as he is, and I'm a huge fan of his as a player, but he can be a little immature and doesn't always take the game seriously. And so that's the biggest thing to me, because that team has a lot of talent, but the reason and the fact that they're winning home games shows that they're plenty good enough to win.
Right.
They're just lazy and don't put in the focus on the road. And I think that in the playoffs, to a certain extent, in the NBA, a lot of teams, especially like that, will just flip the switch and turn on. I mean, the Miami Heat, for always, when LeBron was down there, had worse regular season records than they should have every year. But when the playoffs came around, they all locked in and said, okay, we're going to actually buckle down, focus, and get to work here. And I think the 76ers will be able to do that in the playoffs. I think that all of the messing around and all that type of thing will come to an end. They'll say, okay, it's time to really get serious here and really put in the work. And that's why I think, even though that road record's bad, even if it is in a random city somewhere, or with the virus going on because of that, or even if it is home and away, I think that they are plenty good enough to buckle down and win 1 game in Boston if they need to.
Moving on to your last first-round matchup, you've got the Toronto Raptors beating the Brooklyn Nets 4-1. I don't know if you're taking into account the fact that Kyrie Irving had gotten injured towards the end of like what was the regular season. Is that why they have the 1 win? If Kyrie injured isn't hurt, is it a sweep?
I just think that Toronto will just get lazy in one of the games in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think that Brooklyn, even if Kyrie plays or not, if Kyrie plays, I feel like he could help you win 1 game, and then it would be a detriment to you losing the rest of the series.
Right.
And if he isn't healthy, that team does have some talent on it still, but I'm just giving him 1 game because I don't think Toronto's that good.
No?
And
you have them
don't.
losing the next matchup. All right.
That's so right.
Speaking of losing the next matchup, if you want to talk about the second round, you can start anywhere you want.
Yeah, sure. We'll go back out west to start. I've got the Lakers beating the Jazz 4-3, and the only reason that's a 7-game series is because it's a bad matchup for the Lakers.
I mean,
because Rudy Gobert I don't like him. I'm not a fan of the way he plays. I'm just not a fan of it. Plus, just his thing with the coronavirus infecting Donovan Mitchell. I mean, come on.
Do we know who infected who?
We don't, but it's safe to say who was the one who was making a fool of themselves.
He did. He did look like a goofball.
He looked like a complete idiot. But I do think that in all seriousness, when they get out on the court, I do think that he will cause the Lakers some problems because Anthony Davis is a very good player, but he's not a very physical player.
Right.
And I think Rudy Gobert could take advantage of that and score some inside as well as on rebounding.
Yeah, Anthony Davis has even come out and personally said, I don't want to play the 5. Because even in today's league, when you've got European centers like Nikola Jokic or Rudy Gobert, he said he doesn't want to have to play that physical style. So you think that that Rudy Gobert will neutralize any effect that Anthony Davis has on the game?
I do, actually. I think those two will cancel each other out, actually. Even though Anthony Davis is a better player, he doesn't like to play physical. He is soft, and he doesn't like to beat and bang inside. He doesn't want to play center, even though he's plenty tall enough. And it's just because of the fact that he doesn't like to get in there, do the dirty work. And I think that rebounding will play a big factor in that too, because I feel like the Jazz will get more than 1 shot a lot. And I feel like the Lakers won't. and Donovan Mitchell is a very good player, and I do think that because he plays in Utah, people don't quite realize how good he is because the Jazz aren't exactly a real sexy team. They're not.
Right.
The most exciting to watch, and also Quinn Snyder is a very good coach, even though a lot of people don't know his name. He is a very smart coach, and that team always overachieves every year.
Now, what
And
about
they have won playoff series before.
they have, although they did beat your beloved Oklahoma City Thunder, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they showed up Russell Westbrook with Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, three of your two of your three most favorite players in Carmelo and Russell Westbrook. About the Lakers versus the Jazz. Now, what do you think Anthony Davis's defensive impact will have? Because there's a lot of people saying this year that, he's basically in like a 3-team race for Defensive Player of the Year between him, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Ben Simmons. Those three guys have, been the three best defensive players in terms of impact and intensity throughout the whole season.
Yeah, Anthony Davis, I don't think that he's a very good defensive player, and he's a good shot blocker, and I do give him a lot of credit for that. And he does put in effort on defense, which is something a lot of other stars in the NBA don't do. But it's just, again, it comes down to the physicality. I do think that he would play well on defense, but how good is he going to be on the defensive rebounding if he's going to get pushed around a little bit by some of the more physical players Utah has? Rudy Gobert is not just going to stand there and let Anthony Davis just block his shot or just stand there and let him get away with it. I think Rudy Gobert will rough him up a little bit and get him off of his game. And because a lot of players in the NBA today are a little bit soft. And I think Anthony Davis is a little bit soft, and if you push him around a little, I think he'll kind of fade away a little bit.
Now, with the Lakers coach, Frank Vogel, correct?
Yes.
What if he decides to go with a big man lineup where he throws out JaVale McGee at center, Anthony Davis at power forward, Dwight Howard at small forward. He'll have Kyle Kuzma at shooting guard and LeBron James at point guard, where now the shortest guy in your court is 6'7". That's something that I've kind of been thinking about. That would be crazy. The only thing that would have made it better is if they still had DeMarcus Cousins. They could have put him in at shooting guard. But do you think there's something, a possibility of that happening, where if they need to start collecting rebounds against a team, they might throw out their three centers?
No, because number one, when LeBron's on the court, you want people who can shoot the ball, because LeBron likes to take the ball into the paint and either score himself or kick it out to three-point shooters who just basically go bombs away. And that's the way every LeBron James team plays. And
since Miami.
Yeah, JaVale McGee, come on. JaVale McGee, there's no reason he should.
Two-time championship center.
Yeah, I'm sure he had a lot to do with that. Yeah, he sits on the bench, and plays 8 minutes a game or something. JaVale McGee's not a good player. He's not. And you can't have him on offense. What's he going to do? You can't have LeBron, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee on offense together, because
the greatest rebounding team of all time.
Well, that may be, but the paint's going to be overcrowded. They won't be able to score. And Anthony Davis is not a good shooter either. He can make shots from the outside, but he's not a true stretch player.
He's one of the top shooters at his position, but unfortunately that position is power forward and center, so that doesn't count for much.
Right, and he is capable of making 3-pointers. I would say he's maybe about average, just slightly below average from the outside on a consistent basis. He'll have nights where he makes them, and he'll have nights where he doesn't. So it's just, I don't see the Lakers being able. I know they have big men on their roster, but they're not quality big men. And Dwight Howard at this point that back is not getting any younger, and he's just not what he used to be.
Right.
And so I do think that even if they do put him in, plus you can't put plus Kyle Kuzma can't guard anybody. So, and if they did try and go with a big lineup, well, then who's going to guard Donovan Mitchell? Because he's too fast for LeBron at this age to guard him.
Maybe, I don't know. I think LeBron knows how to work angles pretty well.
He does, and he's a smart defender, but he doesn't have the foot speed.
It definitely wouldn't be a smart move to say, LeBron, go get Donovan Mitchell, especially a 35-year-old LeBron. But I get what you're saying.
He's not 25 anymore.
All right, you got another 7-game series in
the
West. So it seems you're pretty high on the Denver Nuggets this year. You don't think they're just a regular season team.
I don't, because they have been recently, but I do think that they have grown from their previous mistakes, specifically last year's playoffs. Losing in last year's playoffs should have been inexcusable for them. But
who did they lose to last year?
I believe Portland.
Yeah, I think Portland upset them to make the conference finals. Wasn't Portland like a 6 seed last year that made the conference finals?
I know I forget what seed they were, but I know they made it, and they should not have beaten Denver. Denver did not. No. Denver lost that series more than Portland won it. They basically wrapped it up in a nice little Christmas present and handed it to them and said, here, we don't want to play anymore. You guys go ahead.
Who do you think the best point guard in the NBA is?
The best point guard in the NBA?
Yeah, right now.
Probably LeBron. If you're considering him. He plays point guard.
Other than LeBron. Yeah, I mean, you're okay. You're right about that. But other than LeBron, because he's not.
That's a tough question. Best point guard in the NBA?
Yeah. Full health.
Full health.
Yeah.
I would probably go with it's probably Damian Lillard.
Yeah, see, to me it's like a 3-team race. You got the traditional point guards, Steph and Damian, who they're both excellent deep shooters. They're both very impactful, but they have a couple defensive liabilities. And then my third best point guard is Ben Simmons. I think that his size and his just pure defensive ability, even when he defends point guards, I think that that's so elite that moves him up for me. But, the point there is that, I mean, when you have either the best or the second best point guard in the league with Damian Lillard, I don't really know if you can say that they didn't earn the series,
I'm not saying he played poorly. He played very well. I'm just saying Denver played so bad in that series that it's their fault for losing. They were the more talented team, top to bottom, and should have won. Yeah. For them against the Clippers, I do have them going. So I would have it going 7 games just because it's a bad matchup again for the Clippers. The Clippers struggle.
Can't take out Nikola Jokic.
Jokic is 7 feet tall. A legitimate 7 feet tall, and he's a big 7-footer. So if he puts that big behind of his down on the low block, I don't know of anyone on the Clippers roster who has a prayer of stopping him.
Plus, he's also an excellent passer out of the post too. So if they wanted to double him, that'd be a bad matchup. I get what you mean. Like that, those kind of decisions were what helped me choose a lot of my rankings out east. Like if you see here, I've got the Toronto Raptors moving on, not because I think the Toronto Raptors are some world beater, but just because I think that they have, the requisite depth and the right combination of big men versus wing versus guards to take out the 76ers and the Heat. And I know that obviously we haven't discussed the Heat-Bucks series yet, but I mean, I think that that's just a matchup where the Heat, beat the Bucks. And then the Toronto Raptors just match up a lot better with the Heat. So, yeah, I know. I get what you mean with those matchups. They can be pretty pesky because
basketball is a game of matchups. And even there's 5 guys for each team on the court. That's it.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be able to match up with the other team's best player. You've got to have someone to throw at him. And I'm sorry, but, the Clippers, guys like the Zubac, Montrezl Harrell, and they might even throw one of the Morris twins that they have on him.
Marcus.
But Yeah, I always get them mixed up. Yeah, Marcus. But they're all they all have one thing in common. They're too small.
Mm-hmm.
They're too small, and Jokic is he's just too big. And you look at him and you look at the guy guarding him, he's probably got at least 50 pounds of everybody who's going to guard him,
Probably, yeah.
as well as several inches. So, and you can say that I do have the Clippers still winning, but
Yeah, that's why
I
that's
think
why
it will
in the
be
matchup
difficult.
that I have the Clippers and the Rockets matching up in the second round. And even though I like the Rockets, that's just a terrible matchup for the Rockets because
Yeah,
when you think about guys like Patrick Beverley, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, all on the wing, it's like they don't have any more shooting. And what are the Rockets when they don't have shooting? Nothing.
yeah, and the Clippers are basically they're not as small as the Rockets are, but they
No.
are a small team, and they're basically a way better version of the Rockets, in my opinion. They've got
A more defensive minded version of the Rockets is what I would say.
and they've got the they've got real great wing players. When you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard both on each wing, that's very good. But neither one of them can stop Jokic. So I think Jokic, just based off of sheer size, gets you a couple of games in there. And I also like Jamal Murray. I think he could have a game in a playoff series where he scores big and he helps get you one that you shouldn't get.
Right.
So I've got them winning. I got them winning 3, and I think it's a tough series. And boy, if you're a Clippers fan, you've got to be rooting for the Rockets in that series.
You would.
Because I think Denver would be scary for them. But I do think they'd win, but I think it would be, again, a difficult series. Clippers would not have an easy road to the finals at all.
No. All right. And again, speaking of matchups, let's head out east and talk about some of the ones that I had sort of prefaced. Let's take a look at the Bucks Heat. You think it's going to be a relatively easy series for the Milwaukee Bucks?
I think it will be a difficult 5-game series where the games are close.
Okay,
but Milwaukee keeps winning.
They just happen to fall Milwaukee's way. All right.
Right. Milwaukee wins the game, but it's not like they're winning every game by 20 points.
Okay, I see what you mean.
I just think that Miami, just outside of Jimmy Butler, they don't have necessary talent. I mean, they have good players. Bam Adebayo is a good player, but
I mean, for me, my rationale is I've seen the sort of size that the Miami Heat have, and it's not like they don't have the sort of big men that the Toronto Raptors had last year. When the Raptors, came in to face Milwaukee last year, they had big guys like Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka that the wings like like Kawhi Leonard could funnel towards. And I think that that's a lot of what the Milwaukee Bucks, have to look forward to if they face the Miami Heat. I think that, you've got guys like Bam Adebayo, and then you've got the wing players, guys that can shoot like Hero, and then you've got, a lot of those young athletic rookies. But I also think that Jimmy Butler, if he wanted to, I think he could just kind of go over to Chris Middleton and eliminate him if he wanted to in a one-on-one matchup. And then at that point, it's basically Giannis versus 4 guys, because even though they're a good defensive team, they don't have a lot of scoring options outside of those 2.
I do think that I have a lot of respect for Jimmy Butler. I'm a big fan of his as a player, but I do think he could help. I think he could pretty well neutralize Chris Middleton, but Milwaukee does have scoring from other places. And they do have both Lopez twins. And Brook Lopez has not forgotten how to score in the paint.
No.
Just because he stands outside and shoots threes now, I don't think he forgot the fact that for the first, probably 8-10 years of his career or whatever, he played inside mostly.
It's kind of like the Kevin Love effect with LeBron James. Was Brook Lopez now with Giannis? I get what you mean.
Right, exactly. I mean, Kevin Love didn't forget how to play in the post when he played with LeBron. He spent a lot of time outside shooting threes because that was what was best for the team. So I do think that they could see some adjustments in that series, and you could see Brooke Lopez go back out for kind of turn back the clock a little bit and say, okay, I'm going to go back what I used to do and score some in the post. And I think they should turn that, especially when Giannis isn't in the game.
Yeah.
You're getting him a breather. I'd like to see let's see some more Brooke Lopez down in the low block. See if he can get some post up points down there and see if that can cause a little issue for the Heat. And I do think the Miami Heat. I'm just not ready to believe that. I do think that you can throw multiple players at Jimmy Butler, and I'm just not a believer in the rest of that team. I mean, you're going to be relying on Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Bam Adebayo to score points for you.
Too young for you?
On Tyler Hero, yes, and Bam Adebayo, yes. I just think that they're not. I think it's a bit of a mismatch here because Jimmy Butler is at the back end of his prime, and those guys haven't hit their prime yet. And that's the problem I think the Heat are going to have.
Jimmy Butler's the same age as Kawhi Leonard and Klay Thompson and Kyrie Irving.
Yes, but he's played so many minutes.
All right.
As the thing, and he also plays both ways. He plays very hard. You play hard, you don't get to play for as many years.
Something that I actually predicted in my video, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, go click on it, same YouTube channel. But I actually predicted that next year or potentially the year after, we could possibly be seeing a Miami Heat Dallas Mavericks Part 3. And I think that to me, if they keep the same main core that they have right now, could be potentially one of the most entertaining series that we've seen in a long time. Because I guess I'm just a little high on the Miami Heat, probably more than I should be, but it's fair. If you think that the games are going to be 5 close games, maybe
5 close games.
Maybe each game is won by a margin of like 1 to 7 points. I'll understand that.
Right, I do. I think it will be a tough 5-game series. I just don't necessarily, outside of Jimmy Butler, I don't think Miami has anybody else you can go to and say, hey, go get me a bucket.
And they don't necessarily have a coaching advantage anymore. Normally with the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra, you'd think that they have, like a decided coaching advantage over most of the league. But, Budenholzer out in Milwaukee, I believe he's been like top 3 coach of the year candidate for like the last 3 years.
Yeah, and very deserving as well. His teams, going back when he was in Atlanta, his teams always perform at expectations or better. And in my opinion, he is a very solid coach. Mm-hmm. And I think that matters. Coaching matters a lot in the playoffs more than it does in the regular season.
Absolutely. And then your last second-round matchup, we've got the Toronto Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, I think this is when Toronto finally misses Kawhi Leonard. There's going to be a point in time at some point when you're going to miss a top 5 player in the NBA who just basically left and you didn't get anything back for him.
No, not at all.
Eventually, they're going to miss him. And I think in this series, they're going to miss him because it was a 7-game series between those two teams last year with Kawhi Leonard. Right now, they don't have it.
Right down to the very last shot of the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the bottom line is Marc Gasol is too old. I mean, he can't stop Joel Embiid at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He can't. He's 5 years ago, I think, 5 years ago with a younger Kyle Lowry and a younger Marc Gasol, I think they would have had a much better shot. But
what about Pascal Siakam? He's a guy who he's probably either first or second this year in the most improved player race. He seems to have taken over the Kawhi Leonard role pretty well. Last year, he was more of a role player. This year, he kind of exploded. I think that maybe last year, the team sort of kind of pushed him into a little corner because when you have Kawhi Leonard, you're going to use him. But, Pascal Siakam's a guy who, he's tall. He's probably like 6'8", 6'9". He can, play the wing defensively really well. Plus I think he's been around like a 24 point per game scorer, and he's young. So, is that not enough to make it at least another win or another game for the series?
Because Pascal Siakam is not where he needs to be yet. He's on his way there, but he's not there yet. And I do think that he's going to have a hard time with – I think the 76ers are going to put Ben Simmons on him. And Ben Simmons is just as tall, just as athletic, and he's one of the best defenders in the league. And I do think that Ben Simmons will maybe not neutralize Pascal Siakam, but he'll make his life miserable in this series. Right. And they outside of – again, Marc Gasol and Kyle Lowry are not going to make up for what Joel Embiid's going to do.
Maybe Fred VanVleet just needs to have another baby.
Well, Fred VanVleet, again, nice player, but no. Toronto just doesn't have that talent. If they had Kawhi Leonard, I think they could win, but they don't anymore. They just don't have enough.
You think if they just kind of traded away one of their starters for somebody that's like a higher end starter, that they're like a championship team like they were last year still? Yeah. Because I like the Toronto Raptors. To me, they kind of remind me a little bit of like a diet 04 Pistons, where like everybody, it'd be hard to say who the best player and who the fifth best starter is, because like they're all sort of in that same class. But I think that when you've got guys like a Marc Gasol and a Serge Ibaka, two big guys, I think that might be a pretty good matchup for Joel Embiid. Plus, that size would clog up the lane for Ben Simmons if he's trying to score. I think it's just a matchup issue, but I have no problem moving on Philadelphia. They're an extremely talented team.
Right, and I do think that it's just Toronto doesn't have reliable scoring. They just don't. They don't have Philadelphia. You can look at Joel Embiid and you can pencil in 25 points. And you can pretty well do that.
And I don't even think he's scoring 25 points per game in the regular season this season. I think he took a step back. He's down to like 22 now.
Yeah, I trust him in the playoffs to come through for a big game. I do think his minutes are limited, but he's probably because a lot of times in regular season they do try and limit his minutes because of his injury issues.
Yeah.
They ain't going to do that in the playoffs. If they need Joel for 38 to 40 minutes, they're going to say, all right, big guy, go get him.
That's fair.
And so
I also like OG Anunoby on the Toronto Raptors. I think OG Anunoby, he made another step this year. He pretty much doubled all of his stats. Now he's averaging around 11 points and 7 rebounds. I think he's a pretty valuable asset off the bench at least.
Yeah, but here's the thing in the playoffs. In the NBA playoffs, young, improving players – don't win championships. They don't.
Fair.
And so when you have people like Pascal Siakam, who is, again, very good and getting a lot better, but he's not there yet. And when you see guys like, OG Anunoby, again, he's raw but talented, and you have those types of players and those types of teams don't win in the playoffs. They don't go very deep. You have to lose in the NBA before you win. And we saw that with Oklahoma City with Durant, Harden, and Westbrook. They had to lose first before they went anywhere. And I think you're going to see that here with Toronto. Pascal Siakam's going to have to lose in the playoffs, and he's going to have to realize what it's like to be the best player on a contending team. And he's going to have to get all that attention, and I don't think he's ready for it yet.
I think before Kawhi got there, he spent a few years losing to LeBron. I don't know if that doesn't count for anything, but he was a little young back then. Moving on.
Thanks for bringing back the fond memories of that.
Oh man, that shot back in 2018. That's still one of the weirdest shots I've ever seen LeBron take.
Hey.
Moving on to the conference.
I liked it.
Out west, again, you have the Los Angeles battle that everyone's been waiting for. And, in the East, obviously you have the Bucks and the 76ers, two teams that at the beginning of the season, everyone, figured it'd be one of those two or at least both of them like that in there. So take us through these series.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the Lakers Clippers first. This is the one that everybody in the media desperately wants to have happen,
Mhm.
and I'm sure ESPN and TNT are just begging for this for sure. I mean, it's going to be a good series, and I would have the Clippers in six. I really do because I don't think the Lakers to me remind me a lot of the 2018 Cavs, where when you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, and for the Cavs it was LeBron and Kevin Love.
Did you just equate Anthony Davis to Kevin Love?
Anthony Davis is a little better, but I'll grant you that. But
I mean,
he's a little better,
it's
but I
interesting.
don't.
It's interesting that your rationale for the Clippers having very difficult, first and second round matchups is that they have to face two teams that have relatively excellent offensive centers. And then moving on to the conference finals. Now I'm wondering here because they didn't pick up Bill Russell along the way. So So who's going to stop Anthony Davis in the paint, and what's going to stop LeBron James from scoring at the rim? Because, I mean, you and I both know traditionally LeBron James never gets stopped in the perimeter. He always gets stopped in the paint.
Yes.
So what's the difference here?
LeBron throughout his career has struggled against teams that have shot blocking centers.
Mm-hmm.
Very physical shot blocking centers. And that's throughout his entire career. But the reason the Clippers will win this is because I don't think LeBron won't be the reason the Lakers lose this game. What do they have when LeBron James goes to the bench? Who's going to
go from the second best offense in the league to about the 28th best offense in the league?
Right. That's my point. And that's why they remind me of the 2018 Cavs, because that team was a great team when LeBron was in the game. And when LeBron was out of the game, they had no clue what to do. That team they just couldn't do it with LeBron out of the game. Everybody outside of Kevin Love on that team looked around like a deer in the headlights when he wasn't out there.
So you think?
And I feel like this Lakers team. Wait, I do. Anthony Davis is obviously he's a big boy and he can go get his own baskets, but I don't think anyone else on that roster is going to be able to say, okay, well, maybe I'm going to go score some points now. Maybe I can take control of things for a little bit and let LeBron get a rest. I don't think that's going to happen. And LeBron at 35 can't play 46 minutes a game through a 7-game playoff series.
So you think that the probably like 6 or 7 minutes that LeBron spends on the bench in all of these games, you think that's where the Clippers are just going to be like, you know what, let's win the series?
I bet you in almost every game, maybe with the possible exception of one, whenever LeBron goes to the bench, here comes those 10-2 runs. And that's what's going to happen is the Lakers are going to look around on offense and they're going to be all panicky like, oh, no, what do I do?
That happened a lot with those Cleveland Cavaliers. You're not wrong.
That is why they lost. And that is why they had issues, because they would look around. All of a sudden, you'd have guys going, well, LeBron's not out here. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And that's the same thing that's going to happen with this Lakers team. They don't have that third player who, when LeBron's not out there, I mean, who's the Kyrie? LeBron had Kyrie Irving when he won the championship. He's somebody who, when LeBron was out of the game, Kyrie can take care of the ball and he can get you some buckets.
Absolutely.
And play make for other players.
Kyrie Irving's an excellent second.
Absolutely, he's an excellent second banana, and he is perfect to have for someone like LeBron who can just he can go to the bench for 6 minutes and it not be an absolute mess on offense.
Right.
The Lakers don't have that. I'm sorry, Avery Bradley's not going to get it done for you.
Avery Bradley, an old Danny Green. I mean, maybe this is where the Lakers decide to dust off the corpse of Rajon Rondo and maybe playoff Rondo comes back. That might be something that would work out. Maybe because when Rondo and LeBron are on the court at the same time, it's a bad matchup. But if Rondo was able to run the team only when LeBron was off the court, say Rondo was there to strictly play 7 minutes a game, for when LeBron is off the court, and they just design the offense around Rondo. What do you think happens there?
I think you're going to get Dallas Mavericks Rajon Rondo. That's what I think you're going to get.
Arguing with the coach and disgruntled?
Yeah, I just don't think he's got it anymore. I think Rajon Rondo is.
Remember,
the modern NBA is not a place for Rondo. You can't have little people who can't shoot.
The last time that we saw Rajon Rondo in the playoffs, him and what team is Zion on? The New Orleans Pelicans. Him and the New Orleans Pelicans were taking down the number 2 seeded Portland Trailblazers. That's right. He personally guarded Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum, just depending. And
right.
I mean, you remember that? Like I'm pretty sure they won that series and it was either 4 or 5 games.
Yes, but that's again the time. Rajon Rondo's time has passed. He's done.
Drafted in 2006, correct?
Yes, but sometimes players are just, for whatever reason, not everyone's LeBron James. They don't.
Everyone
most players don't get to play for 17 years and still be good. Hey, that's not how it works. Plus, Rondo has not learned to shoot, and Rondo has lost a couple steps that he didn't have to lose. So he doesn't have that quickness he used to have. When he lost that, he lost his career basically. He lost a step he couldn't afford to lose, and so I'm not seeing that with him. And again, it's just going to be a disaster when LeBron's off the court. It's not going to work. When Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are off the court, they run the offense through Lou Williams. Lou Williams, I think, will play a big role in that series because he can. If the Lakers had Lou Williams, I think they would win, but they don't. Lou Williams is someone who can take over the game for 4 or 5 minutes, and he can let Kawhi Leonard and Paul George get a breather, and he can get you a few buckets, and he's an underrated playmaker. He can create shots for some of those other guys in the Clippers, and the Clippers, they just have, in my opinion, they've got a little bit better role players than the Lakers do. And they're just going to throw people at LeBron. LeBron is not going to have an easy series. I think he'll still play pretty well, but it's not going to be an easy one for LeBron. They've got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can both go on LeBron. They've got Marcus Morris, who I don't think can stop LeBron, but can make him a little uncomfortable.
I mean, we remember what he said back in Boston. He said, "I think I'm outside of Kawhi Leonard. I think I'm the best at defending LeBron." And he had one game where he held LeBron to, I want to say, 18 points, and then I think 3 consecutive 40-point games. So it's going to be rough if he tries to call him out.
That's because, he's not a bad player, but he should just shut up. Again, that's ridiculous. But it's
some
not
guys you don't want to make mad.
No, but sometimes it's very different to guard LeBron for 35 minutes a game than to guard LeBron for 10 to 12.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Because when you get to switch off Patrick Beverley versus Paul George, and then Kawhi Leonard, and then anybody, Marcus Morris, that's a lot. That's pretty similar to what the Spurs used to do to Steph Curry several years ago. Mm-hmm. Back when the Spurs, I believe it was the series, the 2017 season, back when the Spurs were up, in that famous game, and Zaza Pachulia undercut Kawhi Leonard, and everything from there is history. But I believe that the Spurs had the season series on the Golden State Warriors by I think it was I don't know how many times they played. I think it was 3-1 or 4-1, something like that. But it was basically because they used to hand off Steph Curry a lot. And so you think that LeBron James is just going to get physically tired from all these matchups? Because that's not something that normally we see from him.
I don't think he'll get physically tired. I just think it will not be – I think LeBron will get his numbers, but I think he's going to have to work harder for them. Because, again, when you can throw multiple guys at LeBron, It's not like he's getting the same guy over and over and over again. He just wears him down and says, okay, you know what? By halfway through the third quarter, you know what? He's mine. I got it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's what LeBron can do. If you keep the same guy on LeBron over and over and over again, eventually they're going to get tired of bumping into somebody who's 270 pounds of muscle.
Fair enough.
And, you know, again, when you get from muscle bodies at them, I know that they don't have a great shot blocking at the rim, which is the thing that traditionally stops LeBron, but I do think they've got enough people they can throw at him. Plus, you don't need a big center to guard Anthony Davis. He doesn't like to beat and bang. I think someone like Montrezl Harrell, who's undersized, can do a much better job against Anthony Davis than he would against someone like Jokic, for instance, who doesn't mind beating and banging a little bit.
No, absolutely not.
You know, I think that Anthony Davis, who likes to shoot turnaround fadeaway jump shots and likes to shoot threes now and likes to shoot outside and wander around outside a little bit. And I do think that I think the Clippers are going to have something for him specifically. Plus, if you get someone like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George switched onto Anthony Davis, that's not as big of a disadvantage as it would be with most other teams. So I do think that they've got enough.
About a 5 or 6 inch difference, and I mean, like we've said,
but Anthony Davis is soft. He doesn't like to push people and score.
Anthony Davis does have a pretty good mid-range floater. You know, he likes to do that little turnaround single-handed pop-up.
He does, but again, you can't just rely on turnaround jump shots.
No.
And you're a big man. And if you're a smaller guy and you're guarding a taller man, what's the thing you want him to do? Shoot turnaround jump shots. What you don't want him to do is keep taking 4, 5, and 6 dribbles in the paint and getting real close to that basket.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, and I don't know if you guys watching know. I'm actually a high school basketball coach. And I coach for a private school. We don't recruit. We don't have players come. It's just, you know, guys that are at the school, you know, we have them try out. We play basketball. Right now I have 2 guys on my team that are 6'6" and 6'7", which is not normal for a small private high school. And let me tell you, it is infuriating when I see those guys dribble 94 feet to run back to like 18 feet out and hit a fadeaway. Will miss a fadeaway specifically. That is infuriating.
Right, exactly. When you're shooting turnaround fadeaway jump shots like Anthony Davis likes to do, you are making the defense's job a lot easier. A lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you look at the great big men of all time, with the possible exception of Dirk Nowitzki. I mean, you don't live on turnaround jump shots are fine to take. I'm not saying they're bad shots. They're not. But when you do keep doing it over and over and over again, it's a much lower percentage shot than if you're basically the closer to the basket you get. As a general rule, the higher percentage it's going to go in.
If you had to rank your top 5 power forwards of all time, who would it be?
Top 5 power forwards of all time?
Yep.
Tim Duncan would be number 1.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be close. These 3 are pretty much interchangeable.
They are pretty close.
Anywhere you wanted to put them, I would probably say Dirk Nowitzki 2, Karl Malone 3, Kevin McHale 4. Anywhere, but you could adjust those 3. Those 3 are all very close to me. Anywhere, if you wanted to move them around, I'm okay with it. And I'd put number 5, Kevin Garnett.
Kevin Garnett, and what about Sir Charles Barkley?
Probably be number 6, but I do think because of he's not tall.
Fair enough.
Those guys are all tall. Barkley was 6'4", and that causes a big disadvantage, especially on the defensive end. Because I know Dirk wasn't a great defender, but he's still 7 feet tall, and it's not easy to shoot over people who are that tall.
You look at those guys, and something that they all have in common, you know, especially between Dirk, Tim Duncan, and Karl Malone, is that they all had an innate, powerful ability to drop their shoulder, drive, and get an easy basket.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin McHale was a little different. He played a little bit more like Hakeem Olajuwon, where he had some amazing footwork to get himself open, but his goal was to still get up and under and get to the basket. The only possible exception to this physicality as a power forward is Dirk Nowitzki, who we all recognize one of the 7 greatest shooters in the history of the league. So, if you're going to be a power forward that isn't physical, you need to be an all-time shooter, which it just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. And I think that's where Anthony Davis's biggest weakness is that he doesn't have the shooting ability that Dirk Nowitzki did to play outside as much as he does. He's not a great shooter. He's average to below average from outside. And and that's okay. There are some people who are not good shooters. Kevin McHale was not a great outside shooter, but he wasn't trying to shoot them. He was trying to get to the basket. Kevin Garnett could shoot outside, but also could go to the basket and had no problem getting down inside and using some muscle and putting up some close shots to the basket. Anthony Davis, he likes to shoot those mid-range shots, those fadeaway shots, and three-pointers, and he's just, in my opinion, he doesn't have that mentality of let me take 4 to 6 dribbles and really push this guy in and shoot a shot from 3 feet away.
For this Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Clippers series, is it safe to say that Anthony Davis's play is potentially the X factor in determining factors of how long the series goes and who wins? You think whether Anthony Davis plays an important style or not, it doesn't really matter what a lot of the other guys do. It's him.
Absolutely. I think Anthony Davis is the key to that series. I think he is by far the most important part of that team, because LeBron, for the most part in the playoffs, you exclude, the earlier part of his career, and specifically 2011, he's pretty consistent.
That's not the early part of his career. Remember, he was drafted in 2003. So.
Well, I know, but he was very young when he was drafted. So if you go 2012 and to the present, he's been fairly consistent in the playoffs. You can pretty much
9 rebounds, 9 assists. That's about the average game.
I would not be surprised for LeBron James to average 30 points and 12 assists in the playoffs on decent efficiency. But he's going to have to need some help. And I think Anthony Davis will get his points. Don't get me wrong. But scoring 25 to 30 points on 52% shooting is different than scoring those same amount of points on 42% shooting. And I think I think Anthony Davis will still score points, but I think because he takes those longer mid-range shots, and he's not that good at them, I think that's going to come back to really bite him, and I think his efficiency is going to be the reason that they don't win. I think it's not going to be LeBron's fault, but I don't think he'll win.
Sometimes that comes back. If they had to give out an award for the best player, if they gave out, an award for the best player in a conference series, who would win it for the Lakers Clippers? Best player, not most valuable, because that normally goes to the team who wins. But who's the best player on that court?
The best player on that court, I still believe, is LeBron.
Okay.
Because Kawhi Leonard he's a better defensive player than LeBron is, especially at this point in LeBron's career. I mean, we can all agree that LeBron is probably a below average defender at this point in his career.
Top 6 in defensive win shares this season. I mean, it does seem like he's lost a step since 2013. I'll give you that.
Yeah, he's not the same. Okay, LeBron James, 7 years ago, right, 2013, he'd take Kawhi Leonard or he'd take Paul George and he'd say, all right, good luck to you. Nothing's coming easy for you. LeBron James now, I'm not saying he's a defensive liability, but he's not a lockdown defender.
This time guarding Patrick Beverley.
Right. He's not going to put an effort on defense. Plus, also part of it, too, is just energy. Because of the fact that the Lakers don't have a secondary player. They don't have Kyrie Irving on that team. And so he's going to have to LeBron has to put in all of his effort on offense for 40-plus minutes a game. And that's going to wear him down, and it's going to take a lot of effort from him on the offensive end. And I don't think he can't play 42 minutes playing both ways. So he's going to sit there and guard Patrick Beverly or, and try and put in no effort on defense. So I still think he's the best player, but it's purely because of his offense. And I don't think Kawhi Leonard has the same amount of specifically making his teammates better on the offensive end that LeBron does.
Moving over to the other side of the bracket, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks, the best regular season team in the NBA versus the Philadelphia 76ers, potentially the most disappointing regular season team in the NBA. I know there were a lot of talking heads. You get guys like Stephen A. Smith and Colin Cowherd that are coming out here saying, like, the Philadelphia 76ers better find themselves at least in the conference finals. So two very different stories. Obviously, we see here that you have the Milwaukee Bucks moving on in a 4-2 series. What does that look like to you?
I would see that the 76ers are going to have the issue with Ben Simmons is basically going to meet the better version of Ben Simmons. And that's basically Giannis is basically a better version of Ben Simmons. And this is where I think it really comes into Giannis, who has improved a lot on his game. He has improved a lot on some of the skills that he didn't have a couple years ago.
Every single year since 2013, he's gotten better.
He's gotten better, and he's worked hard, he's gotten better, and I do think that the 76ers are going to miss out on – this is a series where I think they're going to miss some of the three-point shooting they lost with J.J. Redick. He's no longer there, and the guy they replaced him with, basically Josh Richardson, is a much better defender, but he's nowhere near as good of a shooter. And you have him and Tobias Harris, who aren't great shooters, shooting the threes on the outside. And I do think that Philadelphia's size can be countered by Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee's got 14 feet of Lopez twins.
Right.
And I think that's gonna show up. They've basically built their roster around Philadelphia as a team. I think that they built their roster around saying, all right, we got to beat them. And I think it's really going to come out and really help them out to see the fact that they've got the size to defend and they've got multiple bodies they can throw at Joel Embiid. And I think that Giannis can pretty well easily take out Ben Simmons by himself and then some. And Milwaukee just has the better role players and, in my opinion, are the better constructed team. The pieces fit better. Philadelphia has a lot of talent, but the pieces don't fit perfectly.
The role playing, at least the shooters in Milwaukee, are they're criminally underrated at this point in the NBA. It's a very efficient team. It would remind you a lot of that 2012 and 13 Miami Heat, where you had guys that even if they didn't start their career as three-point shooters, like big men, little guys. I mean, by that point, Ray Allen was just a three-point shooter. And things like that. That's a lot of what the Milwaukee Bucks look like. I think that this is a good matchup. If I had to rank the players in terms of who the best player on the court is, for me, I think it would probably go obviously Giannis 1. Then personally, I like Simmons better than Embiid, but it's close. Then it goes Chris Middleton and Tobias Harris is about a draw. And then I think it's a lot of Bucks players. Probably like 5 Bucks players. So those top 4, it kind of balances out. And then after that, I think it's probably 4 Bucks players before you get to maybe Josh Richardson.
Exactly. And this is where Milwaukee has a lot of older veteran players. And older veteran players are what win in the NBA playoffs. And again, I think they're a much better constructed team because you've got people like Chris Middleton and Giannis play very well together. They play off of each other. And that's important because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons is basically the idea is your turn, my turn type thing. And I think that Brett Brown will get outcoached in this series. because Brett Brown, what he should do, in my opinion at least, is he should work more on staggering the minutes of Embiid and Simmons and have one of them on the court the whole time. And then one of them's on the court. Just say, okay, you're going to run this.
I think they should have traded one of their stars, but I mean, I think
I agree.
what you can get back. I mean, maybe take a look at what take a look at the trade that Golden State did a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. They traded away D'Angelo Russell for Andrew Wiggins and a pick. Do you think that maybe the Philadelphia 76ers could have gotten D'Angelo Russell plus the Golden State Warriors first round pick, which is potentially it has like a 14% chance to be the number 1 overall pick? Do you think they get those two plus a couple second round picks for Ben Simmons?
If Golden State wanted Ben Simmons, I believe that would have been a pretty good package in return for him. Yeah, that's the thing. If Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, it's like they don't play off of each other. They don't play well together. Because Joel Embiid, he can shoot 3-pointers, but let's be real about this. Joel Embiid belongs in the paint.
It's like it's kind of like diet LeBron James with diet Anthony Davis. It's like you just don't have enough raw talent to overcome your obvious deficiency, which is the floor.
Right. The two of you're in the modern NBA, it's hard to have your two best players be not great through. I mean, Ben Simmons doesn't even shoot them. Giannis is not a great 3-point shooter by any stretch of the imagination. But if you leave him wide open, he'll take one and he'll make some of them.
Like he did against the Lakers early on in the season. I believe he made 4 out of 5 shots.
Right. He's not afraid to shoot 3-pointers. He's not afraid to take an open mid-range shot. Ben Simmons looks like he's scared to death to shoot the ball from outside. He looks like he wants no part of it. He's scared to do it. And plus that, also Ben Simmons being such a poor free throw shooter also could have an effect in this series as well, because even if he does get to the line, he's a bad free throw shooter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't when it's a liability in the playoffs when you can basically just do a hack a Shaq on your point guard.
It's a very bad position to be able to hack because, I mean, especially when it comes down to those late game situations and you need to save possessions, they want to inbound it to a guard who can handle the ball, and hopefully when the guard gets fouled, they'll make the shots. That's why a lot of times in those Cleveland years, you saw the ball getting inbounded to Kyrie, because even though as good as LeBron James is, Kyrie Irving's probably the greatest ball handler we've ever seen. Plus, he's probably about 7% from the line better than LeBron. And so that's one of those situations in Philadelphia where, those late games you're not going to have. And the fact that Coach Brett Brown is not an excellent coach by any stretch of the imagination, he's not going to have the opportunity to set up good late game situations as it is. And then, you're shorthanded with the deal that you have. So I fully understand Milwaukee beating the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, absolutely. It's just when you have, in my opinion, Brett Brown's a coaching liability for this team. If he hasn't figured out how to make Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons somewhat work at this point,
3 years,
he's not going to be able to figure it out. I mean, I don't think the light bulb's going to come on his head. Oh, now I've got a new idea. He just keeps doing the same stuff and keeps wondering why it doesn't work.
They gave out an award for the best player on the court, regardless of the win. Is it far and away Giannis? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, moving on to the NBA Finals. If at the beginning of the season, somebody would have said, the Clippers and the Bucks are meeting in the NBA Finals, probably about 40% of America would have said, well, duh. You have the Clippers winning in a 4-3, matchup, a classic 7-game series. Now, again, the Clippers have to face a very excellent big man, especially when it comes to Giannis's ability to get to the rim. What is it besides that? Because from the way that this series looks, Kawhi Leonard doesn't have a Marc Gasol and a Serge Ibaka to push Giannis into anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis averaged 38 in this series, but still lost. Why did the Clippers?
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised because, in my opinion, what the Clippers are going to do, and Doc Rivers is an underrated coach. He has become very underrated, in my opinion. Just because he was a bad GM for the Clippers for years doesn't mean he forgot how to coach. Doc Rivers is a classic case of a bad general manager, but a great coach. And I think he's going to look at this and say, okay, you know what? Giannis could average 40 or even 45 in this series and still lose. Because they can just say, okay, Giannis, beat us by yourself. Go ahead. See if you can do it.
So you think it's going to be a lot of what maybe what the Spurs did to LeBron back in 2007, where it was just kind of, all right, we're going to put one guy out on you on the perimeter, see if we can keep you away, but then nobody is hitting another shot. Because, I mean, maybe – now, remember back in so long ago, the 2019 playoffs, when the Clippers faced the Golden State Warriors, took them to a 6-game series. Patrick Beverley was giving Kevin Durant fits. And, I mean, a lot of that has to do with that Kevin Durant's a lot more finesse than Giannis is. But do you think that if they wanted to just put Patrick Beverley on Giannis, I mean, any of the other wings could pretty much neutralize or, make Chris Middleton a net negative? What would be your defensive game plan if you're the Clippers here?
If I'm Doc Rivers, my defensive game plan for the Clippers is very simple. I'm going to rotate people on Giannis so that way nobody picks up, not only loss of energy, but nobody picks up too many fouls. And I'd want to see, Paul George, Kawhi, Morris, as well as Montrezl Harrell. I want to see them all take a turn on Giannis. And I want to see one-on-one, no help. Because how did the Bucks win? They beat you basically saying, okay, Giannis is better than whoever you try and put on him, and he's going to go to the basket, and then what's somebody going to do? Send help, and then Giannis will kick it right out to somebody who's open or kick it out, one more pass around the perimeter, and there's open threes that they're just going to go bombs away. And I think if I'm Doc Rivers, you don't leave the three-point shooters. Just stick them. Stick them and just let Giannis try and score 100. Let Giannis score all the time if he wants to. And you just say that, okay, nobody else gets anything.
And as a defensive game plan, that's not a bad plan because even though Giannis, for the last 5 years, we've been saying this guy, has the potential to be a top 10 player of all time, by his career trajectory, we've seen it. But so far, he hasn't been a guy like a Tim Duncan, like a Shaq, like, one of those dominant players that when they score points, they can't lose. Giannis has been, we've seen Giannis have decent series, have good games, but still come out on the losing end of it. So defensively, what do the Milwaukee Bucks do to make sure that if Giannis is scoring 40, he's going to be a little tired, but he's still a top 3 defender in the NBA? What do the Bucks do defensively to make sure the Clippers don't run away with it?
Well, for the Bucks to win this series, in my opinion, they've got to keep it somewhat low scoring. Whenever the games they win, I don't think the Bucks are going to win 135 to 128. I think they got to try and keep it about 110 or below at least, preferably in double digits for each team. And what you want to do is you just want to make Kawhi Leonard and Paul George just make them take contested shots. I know it's basic, simple, but basketball is not the most complicated sport. If you put a hand in someone's face, it's harder for them to make it. So you want to keep them in front of them. You don't have to worry too much about big post-up players. And I do think the concern for the Bucks is that one of their advantages is their size. And I think that the Clippers can negate that. basically by saying, okay, well, you know what? We're not real worried about, we're not real worried about Brooke Lopez going down in the paint. We're more worried about trying to make it a more perimeter style game where you have 5 smaller guys out there who are all quick and interchangeable. That's what the Clippers are going to want to play. And I think you'll see contrasting styles, which is what would make it interesting. But you're going to have to see for the Bucks on defense, you're going to have to try and see if you can figure out a way. Because can you keep Brooke Lopez on the court against the Clippers? That's going to be the thing. Is can you keep someone like that on the court?
Who would be your X factor in this game? Either side, who is the one player that if they get neutralized, then that team is definitely going to lose. But if they ball out like they can, that team's almost a shoo-in to win.
Simple. It's Chris Middleton.
Number 2.
Because, it's the X factor in almost every series the Bucks play is Chris Middleton. Because is Chris Middleton good enough to take Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and say, yes, you all are great defenders, but I'm still going to get 25 to 30 points? Can he do that?
Chris Middleton this season, what a lot of people don't realize is he's averaging about 24 and 5 on 50, 40, 90 shooting. I believe he was hitting 44% from the three-point line when the season ended, which is a ridiculously high pace for a number 2 scoring option.
It is, but the key is for this series it's not Giannis. Giannis is going to do what he's going to do no matter what the Clippers try and do to stop him. They can't. But you can stop some of the other players, and that's why I think they're going to win. I do think they will take out people like Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe and say, you know what? You guys aren't going to score your typical averages. You're going to get half of what you typically get. And I think if Chris Middleton doesn't average 24, I think he'll average 18 to 19 in this series, and I think that'll be the big difference because the games they win, I think he'll play well. And the games he doesn't, I don't think he's going to wind up scoring his 25 points that they're going to need from him. Because Giannis needs someone to step up and help him. Especially, because Giannis is not a good three-point shooter. Chris Middleton is. Chris Middleton's going to have to knock down three-pointers, and he's also going to have to create his own shot.
Who is the best player in this series?
The best player is Giannis, but I think the key, though, is that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard put together are better than Giannis and Chris Middleton put together.
I would understand. With Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, what people don't remember is that last year, in the 2018-2019 NBA season, Paul George received the 3rd most MVP votes. And if he can return from his injury bug this year and get back to that, you have 2 top 10 players. And that's a bad matchup. So in that series, Clippers winning, who's the finals MVP?
I think it's going to be Kawhi Leonard. He's the obvious choice. He is the Clippers' best player. And I do think Kawhi Leonard will average over 30 points on good efficiency in this series. I don't see Giannis necessarily wanting to try and guard Kawhi Leonard out on the perimeter all the time. And I do think that Kawhi Leonard has also turned into a very good three-point shooter, especially in catch-and-shoot situations. And he and Paul George can play off of each other and play well together. And I do think that Kawhi Leonard will not only offensively, but I think defensively, he makes Chris Middleton – the games the Clippers win, he makes Chris Middleton's life miserable. And that's why I think he'll deserve it.
That is going to be important to remember is that every single year that Kawhi Leonard has been a bigger focal point of his team's offense, his defense has slipped. Now, no one's going to say that he's not a good defensive player. He absolutely is. But I don't think there's any stretch of the imagination that would still make him the best defensive player in the league. He hasn't won a defensive player of the year since 2014, maybe 15, I believe. And again, every single year, his offensive responsibility has gotten bigger and bigger, and his defensive efficiency, or not even defensive efficiency, but his defensive prowess skill has sort of declined. In this case, because of that, I think that they're going to want a little bit more Kawhi Leonard defense than offense. So I think that they will switch around on Giannis if this is the finals matchup. But I think Kawhi Leonard still gets a little bit bigger bite of that apple than everybody else. Because of that, I think that Paul George gets a huge uptick in his offensive load. I wouldn't be surprised if Paul George ended up averaging 35, like 35, 5, and 5 in that series and taking away finals MVP.
I don't think that Paul George would get the finals MVP, even if he deserves it. I think Kawhi Leonard gets it no matter what. Because finals MVP is more of it's not always about who was the most valuable player on the team in that particular series. So I think for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, they just throw it to whoever was the best player on the winning team.
I get that. I mean, something that's a really weird situation, though, that I could see doubling up is the 2014 NBA Finals when Andre Iguodala won Finals MVP, specifically because of his defense holding LeBron to 36, 13, and 9 on about 40% from the field. As opposed to Steph, who averaged, I want to say it was like 28 points per game on like the 5 assists or whatever. So it could be a situation like that where, they say that, like Kawhi Leonard held Giannis to only 40 points per game. But, I could definitely see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I would agree with you on that.
It's a pretty great bracket, Kevin, and I appreciate you coming in, sitting here to talk with me. And, I want to thank you for your time. This is going to be a great clip. And you don't need to go and watch it because you lived it, but even if you want to that'd be fantastic.
All right, sounds good. Great. Thanks for having me.
I will see you guys.